everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. And if you haven't already, as indicated by the corner down below, be sure to subscribe to the channel today so that you can be aware of all upcoming TTOR videos as they come out. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to check me out at the places that you see to this direction of me over here. Be sure to follow me on Creation Social, which is my own alternative to Twitter. Be sure to follow me on Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to me on BitChute and Rumble, and be sure to follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter. Links to all of these places will be in the description box down below. So, as you can see from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we are talking about how the evolution paradigm is nonsense. This is a remake of a video that I did back in 2018 and is on my BitChute channel, but much like the other videos that I have remade in recent months, the video is poor quality compared to what I can do now, so I am presenting to you a slightly different and better version of that video today. So, if you are a young Earth creationist like me, then you have no doubt encountered atheists and evolutionists who try to convince you that evolution in billions of years is true by appealing to the field of knowledge called science. What we need to do, though, is at some point we need to take a step back from the field of knowledge called science, and we need to examine the evolution paradigm of history that evolutionists and atheists are trying to sell us on when they appeal to science. And so with that being in mind, you may be wondering to yourself, what is the evolution paradigm of history? Well, the evolution paradigm of history is as follows. 14 to 16 billion years ago, the universe came into existence out of nothing in an instant via the Big Bang. 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth came into existence. Both of these events occurred without any intelligent intervention whatsoever, including any kind of creator God. Over the course of these billions of years, life came into existence from non-living material, starting when microbacteria formed on some rocks near hydrothermal vents under the ocean about 3.8 to 4.2 billion years ago, and gradually evolved into all the life forms we see today via natural selection and random chance mutation. This means that all families and the numerous species within these families are related to each other and share a common ancestor in the distant past. Modern humans are the result of evolving from ape-like ancestors over the course of 6 million years. That, in a nutshell, is the evolution paradigm of history, and I just know at some point that we are going to be dealing with atheists and evolutionists in the comments section, like they have so many times in the past, telling me that I'm an idiot, that I'm a moron, I'm just so stupid, I have no idea what evolution is or teaches, and so we're going to have to fact check some of the claims I made regarding the evolution paradigm of history. Now, regarding the age of the universe and Earth, well, that's easy enough to prove. We transition to the Wikipedia entry on the universe. And if you read, it says, the universe is all of space and time and their contents. It comprises all of existence, any fundamental interaction, physical process, and physical constant, and therefore all forms of matter and energy and the structures they form, from subatomic particles to entire galaxy filaments. Since the early 20th century, the field of cosmology establishes that space and time emerged together at the Big Bang 13.787 plus or minus 0.020 billion years ago, and that the universe has been expanding since then. So according to Wikipedia, if we round up a little bit, the universe came into existence via the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. And if you want to round up even higher, you can say it came into existence via the Big Bang 14 billion years ago. So obviously I got that part right. What about the age of the Earth? Well, according to the Wikipedia article on Earth, if you scroll down to natural history, it says, the oldest material found in the solar system is dated to 4.5682 plus or minus blah 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 GA, and GA means billion years ago. By 4.54 plus or minus 0.04 GA, the primordial Earth had formed. In other words, according to the Wikipedia article on the Earth came into existence 4.5 billion years ago. So obviously I got that part of the evolution paradigm of history correct. Well, what about the next claim? The idea that life came into existence from non-living material starting when microbacteria formed on some rocks near hydrothermal vents under the oceans about 3.8 to 4.2 billion years ago. As you can see here on the screen, we have the abiogenesis article here on Wikipedia, which says that abiogenesis, or the origin of life, is the natural process by which life arises from non-living materials such as simple organic compounds. This article did used to say that abiogenesis was an evolutionary process up until a couple of years ago when, because of me talking about it in several videos, atheist activists removed the word evolutionary from Wikipedia's abiogenesis article, something that I documented in this video titled Atheist Activists Remove Evolutionary from Wikipedia's abiogenesis article. Link to this video will be in the description box down below in case you want to know more about that. But back to the Wikipedia article on abiogenesis. When you scroll down into the article, you have to go pretty deep here. We're in a section called Producing a Habitable Earth, and under the subsection Earliest Evidence of Life, we read the following. Based on evidence from the geologic record, life most likely emerged on Earth between 4.32 and 3.48 billion years ago. In 2017, the earliest physical evidence of life was reported to consist of microbialites in the belt of northern Quebec. I can't pronounce that. In banded iron formation rocks, at least 3.77 and possibly as old as 4.32 billion years ago. The microorganisms could have lived within hydrothermal vent precipitates soon after the 4.4 billion years ago formation of oceans during the Hadean. So yes, that part of the evolution paradigm of history where I said that microbacteria formed on some rocks near hydrothermal vents under the oceans about 3.8 to 4.2 billion years ago, that turned out to be true. Wow, look at that, even made it into Wikipedia. Now, there are some people who might call into question the part of the evolution paradigm of history where it says that all life gradually evolved into all the life forms we see today via natural selection and random chance mutation. Well, for your consideration, I have an article from New Scientist that was written in 2006 called Introduction, Evolution. And it is in paragraph 3 that we read the following. Evolution has several facets. The first is the theory that all living species are the modified descendants of earlier species and that we all share a common ancestor in the distant past. All species are therefore related via a vast tree of life. The second is that this evolution is driven by a process of natural selection, or the survival of the fittest. So yes, I got that part right too regarding the evolution paradigm of history. The evolution paradigm of history teaches that all life descended from a single universal common ancestor in the distant past, and that all of evolution is driven by natural selection over billions of years. But what about the last claim that I made about how human beings evolved from ape-like ancestors over the course of 6 million years? Did I get that part of the evolution paradigm of history correct? The Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History website has an article titled Introduction to Human Evolution. The first paragraph of the article says, "Human evolution is the lengthy process of change by which people originated from ape-like ancestors. Scientific evidence shows that the physical and behavioral traits shared by all people originated from ape-like ancestors and evolved over a period of approximately 6 million years." So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The evolution paradigm really does teach that human beings evolved from ape-like ancestors over the course of 6 million years. So every claim I made about the evolutionary paradigm of history has turned out to be true. And now that we know what the evolution paradigm of history is, and that the evolution paradigm of history really does teach the things that I claimed that it did, let's talk about 3 fatal flaws with the evolution paradigm of history that prevent me from believing in it. These are not the only fatal flaws with the evolutionary paradigm of history, but for the sake of this video and not having it run on forever, we're going to stick with 3 fatal flaws with the evolution paradigm of history. Fatal flaw number 1, the macroevolution problem. If you're a Christian or a young earth creationist like myself, then you have probably heard from evolutionists and atheists that there is no difference between microevolution and macroevolution. Macroevolution is merely microevolution over billions of years. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is a complete and utter lie. We're going to prove that this is an utter lie by going to the website Understanding Evolution, which is an evolutionist website that is associated with Berkeley University of California. According to their About page, Understanding Evolution is a non-commercial education website for teaching about the science of evolutionary biology. This site is here to help you understand what evolution is, how it works, and how it factors into your life. This site is a project of the University of California Museum of Paleontology. But when you go to the credits section, it says that this site was initially developed as a collaborative project of the UCMP and the National Center for Science Education and first launched in 2004. The National Center for Science Education is one of the evolutionist organizations that Kent Hovind used to love to rail on back in his creation seminar days, and they are one of the primary propagandists of evolutionary propaganda in the education system. So this is a trustworthy website as far as getting accurate information about what evolution teaches, because the people who made this website and maintain it, they are diehard evolutionists who are committed to the cause of defeating creationism. Now, let's go into their article, Defining Microevolution. It says that microevolution is evolution on a small scale within a single population. This means, of course, that microevolution is when one species of something becomes another species of something. So a good example of microevolution would be bacteria becoming resistant to antibiotics. We see this happen all the time. This is what they call microevolution. Creationists call it adaptation, but it is the one aspect of evolution that can actually be observed in real time and therefore documented and therefore set up experiments to verify. The problem, of course, with this as an example of microevolution is the bacteria is just bacteria still. It's a different strain of bacteria, sure, but it's still just bacteria. Now, what about macroevolution? Well, according to their article on macroevolution, macroevolution generally refers to evolution above the species level. So instead of focusing on an individual beetle species, a macroevolutionary lens might require that we zoom out on the tree of life to assess the diversity of the entire beetle clade and its position on the tree. In other words, macroevolution would be something from one family of animals turning into another family of animals. Forget about a new species coming into existence. It's changing into a different animal family altogether. A great example of macroevolution would be humans evolving from ape-like ancestors over the course of 6 million years, like we already mentioned in this video. So one thing that this website, Understanding Evolution, proves is that microevolution and macroevolution are not the same thing. The atheists and evolutionists who are telling you that it is, they are lying to you. Microevolution can be observed happening in action. Macroevolution cannot. They are fundamentally different, micro and macroevolution. So atheists and evolutionists who claim otherwise, they are lying to you. And I was able to find this resource years ago with just a couple of minutes of searching in a Google search and opening up links. It was not hard to find this information. Now, fatal flaw number 2 with the evolution paradigm of history is that evolution is a historical science, not observational science. When creationist ministries like Answers in Genesis have pointed out that evolution is a historical science and not an observational science, atheists and evolutionists love to claim that this distinction is a creationist construct, that there's no such thing as historical science, much less evolution being a historical science. The problem with atheists claiming this is that when you actually look into where this concept of a historical science comes from, it came from a die-hard evolutionist who made the distinction of historical science versus observational science in the context of evolution. The article in question is called Darwin's Influence on Modern Thought. It was written by Ernst Mayr, and this is an article in Scientific American. Ernst Mayr is one of the most diehard evolutionists who's ever lived. He is most known for saying that evolution is such a fact that we don't ever have to prove its truthfulness again. And it is this Ernst Mayr, when you scroll down into the article and you get into the section titled A Secular View of Life, you find him saying the following. These 4 insights served as the foundation for Darwin's founding of a new branch of the philosophy of science, a philosophy of biology. Despite the passing of a century before this new branch of philosophy fully developed, its eventual form is based on Darwinian concepts. For example, Darwin introduced historicity into science. Evolutionary biology, in contrast with physics and chemistry, gulp, is a historical science. The evolutionist attempts to explain events and processes that have already taken place. Laws and experiments are inappropriate techniques for the explication of such events and processes. Instead, one constructs a historical narrative consisting of a tentative reconstruction of the particular scenario that led to the events one is trying to explain. So according to Ernst Mayr, one of the most diehard evolutionists who's ever lived, a guy who said that evolution is such a fact that we don't need to prove its truthfulness anymore, he says that evolutionary biology, evolution, is a historical science and that it's actually inappropriate to use laws and experiments to try to prove that evolution is true, because evolution is not an observational science. It takes too long to occur for anybody to observe it and therefore make a record of its occurrence or to form an experiment to verify that it's a naturally occurring phenomenon. No, evolution is a historical science according to one of the most diehard evolutionists who ever lived. And when Answers in Genesis claims that evolution is a historical science, they always link back to the article that I'm showing you on screen. This concept of evolution being a historical science and evolution therefore not being based on observational science, it comes from this evolutionist article. It is not a creationist construct. And so any evolutionist or atheist who tells you that historical science is not a real thing and that evolution, being a historical science and not an observational science, is just a creationist construct, they are either one, lying through their teeth, or they're completely ignorant morons who do not know that the concept of evolution being a historical science comes from one of their own. Now, the third and final fatal flaw with the evolution paradigm of history that we want to look at today is this. The evolution process takes so long to occur that nobody can see it happening in action. And so, in order to prove this fact, we're going to actually look at this article by Stephen Jay Gould titled Evolution as Fact and Theory. And we're going to read about Stephen Jay Gould's punctuated equilibrium theory, which is a more accelerated version of evolution. Stephen Jay Gould writes, "I count myself among the evolutionists who argue for a jerky or episodic rather than a smooth, gradual pace of change. In 1972, my colleague Niles Eldredge and I developed the theory of punctuated equilibrium. We argued that two outstanding facts of the fossil record, geologically sudden origin of new species and failure to change thereafter, stasis, reflect the predictions of evolutionary theory, not the imperfections of the fossil record. In most theories, small isolated populations are the source of new species, and the process of speciation takes thousands or tens of thousands of years. This amount of time, so long when measured against our lives, is a geological microsecond. It represents much less than 1% of the average lifespan for a fossil invertebrate species, more than 10 million years. Large, widespread, and well-established species, on the other hand, are not expected to change very much. We believe that the inertia of large populations explains the stasis of most fossils over millions of years." So Stephen Jay Gould and his colleague Niles created the theory of punctuated equilibrium, which basically says that evolution happened so fast that it left behind no evidence, basically. They made this theory because the idea of evolution occurring slowly and gradually over millions and billions of years via natural selection, the evidence for it is so non-existent that basically they created a whole nother theory of evolution to explain why there's almost no evidence supporting evolutionary theory. Notice how Stephen Jay Gould says that the process of speciation takes thousands or tens of thousands of years, which is such a long time span when measured against our lives, i.e. human time spans, the amount of time that humans live before they die. In other words, the process of evolution, even punctuated equilibrium theory, takes so long to occur that nobody can see it happen in action. And since evolution cannot be observed in action because the process takes way too long, this means that nobody was around to make a historical record of its occurrence, and it also means that nobody can set up an experiment that proves that evolution in the macro sense or any other sense actually occurs in nature as a natural process. This means, of course, that evolution is not scientific, and it is not a naturally occurring phenomena. It is a religious belief, no different than creationism, other than the fact that creationism has better evidence supporting it. And so, when we look at the evolution paradigm of history, and we see the fatal flaws that it has, as I've documented in this video. If you're a Christian or a creationist and you got evolutionists and atheists trying to sell you on the evolution paradigm of history, just compare the evolution paradigm of history to the biblical worldview that you claim to hold. The biblical account of origins, the creation account, also falls under the category of historical science, But unlike the evolution paradigm of history, we have a historical account found in Genesis 1:1 through verse 3 in chapter 2 that documents the entire creation account. We at least have a historical account that describes how the creation of the earth, the universe, the sea, and everything that is in those three things occurred. Furthermore, since creationism is tied directly to the biblical account of origins, the God who made the universe, the earth, the sea, and everything that is in those three things over the course of 6 ordinary days, roughly 6,000 years ago, came to the earth in the form of a human being, Jesus of Nazareth, back in the 1st century, and he lived 30-some years on this planet, where he said and taught and did a lot of things that are recorded not just in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but are also recorded by Roman historians from the late 1st century, early 2nd century, who covered Jesus as well, albeit in less detail and far less detail than the Gospels do. So if you are a Christian or a creationist, you at least hold to a worldview that has historical evidence supporting its existence. And atheists and evolutionists are calling on you to trade in that worldview for their worldview. A worldview that outside of microevolution has never, ever, ever been observed occurring in nature, and according to its own paradigm of history, can never be observed happening in nature. Nobody living in the past, the present, or the future will ever be able to observe evolution in any sense outside of microevolution ever occurring. And that is what you are being called to sacrifice belief in the biblical worldview in for a worldview that has far less evidence supporting its paradigm of history than the Bible does. Literally, the only way you can believe that evolution has occurred is that you have to believe that the authority figures telling you that evolution and deep time is true, you have to believe that they are telling you the truth about evolution and billions of years and all the alleged evidence that supports it. You have to trust that they are telling you the truth about that stuff in order to believe in evolution and billions of years. However, once you've gone down the rabbit hole like I have, you can never be an evolutionist or an atheist, because you would literally have to sacrifice your brain at the door and be comfortable with accepting a worldview with an account of origins that has never been observed by anyone or anything in any sense beyond microevolution. And that, my friends, is a sacrifice that I am not willing to make.